and said, God is just, there's something brewing, and we're part of it, And the idea was that you can't just, hold everything in for me. There's people coming behind you. And I think my biggest faith statement is to help the next guy. That's the most important thing in our faith, is working instead of just for yourself, for the next guy. Because the more of us that are saturating this industry, the more of a change we're going to start seeing. And that is what this is about.
Right. And Rich, what is your personal mission statement?
Well, before I say what it is, I have to say how important it has been that I found it to be, because when I decided to quit my day job, it was important to me to kind of put the blinders on and say no to things that didn't fit my mission statement. And so, because it's one job at a time, as you're saying, it's like, what's the next thing, what's the next thing? So you're kind of constantly having to throw these opportunities through the hopper. And so for me, my mission statement is taking part in, I haven't written this out, but kind of the basic is that my mission is to perform and teach others to perform stories that point people to the Lord. Now, there are all sorts of different ways that can be done. It doesn't always have to have an altar call. But I heard a sermon once in which a guy took a whiteboard and he drew this line down the middle, and he drew all of these squiggly lines, straight lines, circles, blah, blah, blah. And they all represented people's walks toward or away from the Lord. There are some people that are hightailing it away as fast as they possibly can. Others are, dancing on the edge. Others have been walking with the Lord, like myself, since they were 5. Wherever these people are, you're encountering them. The average person influences 10,000 people in the course of their lifetime.
Can we tweet that?
So you folks, as entertainers, as performers, how many more times that number are you going to impact in the course of your lifetime? So for me, the stories that I'm telling through the arts have got to be pointing people back to the Lord, turning them around, or drawing them closer if they already know the Lord.
And Mari, what is your mission statement or your purpose?
I feel like my mission statement is to fill a void for something that I never had, which was enlightenment through entertainment.
Okay.
As far as seeing someone on television or seeing someone in ads or just seeing a positive role model in media, that's something that I never saw as a young adult and a teenager. So I'm not one to educate as far as faith, because I think that's the calling of others. I feel like I can entertain using it. So that's what my gift is.
Okay. And can you all tell me, in talking about faith and just the industry and living your mission and your purpose statement, maybe Rich and Mari, you can talk about this, but how tough is it to make decisions surrounding like wearing or not wearing risque clothing, or tough decisions about how to live, in a godly way when you are dealing with other people?
Well, for me, and I don't apply my standards to anyone else, because 90% of my performance income comes from churches. And so how much would I have to be shooting myself in the foot to whatever, fill in the blank? I just don't. I don't do alcohol commercials, not because I think drinking alcohol is sinful, but because 3 of the major denominations that write checks to me for my performances are dry churches. Not one of those denominations would say that drinking is a sin. The Salvation Army, who I've worked with quite a lot, and the Quakers both come from a perspective of, and the Nazarenes both come from a place of the people that we serve have an addiction here. We're not going to encourage them in that way. We're going to stay dry. This is a safe place for you to come. You're not going to have to worry about people having fellowship and alcohol. The Quakers, who I grew up with, have a different stance. They have taken a stance back in the slavery days. They took a very strong stance not to buy dyed clothes because dyes were produced by slaves. And so they wanted to cut off slavery every way that they possibly could. And so today, what that looks like is they don't do alcohol because that's promoting an industry which leads people into alcoholism. So once again, it's not a legalistic thing.
Right.
It's actually a thing of love. But for me, to communicate that to agents is a challenge. But I always take it back to the bottom line,
Right.
and that they can understand.
Okay. Okay. And you're beautiful, and you've had a lot of success in modeling. Like, have you had times where you had to say no to things? Like, what's your threshold? If you can talk about that.
Mine, I've had to walk off the set of a job that paid me $4,000 a day because they wanted me to simply hold a cigarette in my hand. And it's not a big deal, cigarette, but I felt like my responsibility was to the young adults that would see me holding the cigarette, especially since the audience that I talk to and communicate with, they're very young adults, they're teenagers, and so it wasn't a, oh my gosh, I'm a Christian. It was that, but it was more because I felt like there was a responsibility and a duty to be a positive influence. And sure, I could and laugh and hold this cigarette and, you know, make a really nice check, and it was a 3-day booking. So, yeah, I had to walk up the set. My agent was cursing me out, dropping F-bombs in my ear because they were losing their percent, but I was losing all of it. And I wasn't happy. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I needed that income. But it was something that I got to the point where, you know what, yes, I need the job, I need the booking, but I also value who I am, and I cannot be desperate. There's jobs for music videos that I've had to say no to, but it's more of a personal decision, and I don't think, okay, this is how I should live my life as a Christian, so I'm not going to do it. It's because those values are absorbed in who I am, so I'm not trying to satisfy what other people will think about me. It's truly absorbed into my actions and my work. And there have been a couple of jobs where some people may say, why would you do a role like that or a job like that? And I've even said, do you know the people that I affected on set? Do you know how many people I met that were just like, wow, and the stories and the time that you spend staying up late on a set and the crew. And okay, my character was, you know, a young woman who was single and she was going through some trials and tribulations in her life. But that was my job as the actress. But the people I affected was more than that. So for me, it's definitely more of a personal decision, and I guess where you are, and not trying to be something, but really evaluate who you are and where you're at, and be honest with it.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing.
Can I interject one thing? We, as the body of Christ, and as Christian performers, have to accept when someone makes that decision as well. Had she chosen to have that cigarette in her hand, there was a reason. She felt all right. I clear, you know, when my son has to take a role or not take a role, I clear it as his son. But God does that for each one of us. And so we can't judge that because we don't have that relationship with God. She has that relationship. He has that relationship. And we all have to love each other and accept our decisions and uplift each other anyway. And if it's something you feel really convicted about speaking to them, do it in love, in a strong love, and privately. Never in front of other believers to bash them, but out of love, knowing that they are God's child trying to affect the industry.
Awesome word. Can I have a little illustration? I was once cast in a commercial, and there was the commercial started with "Let there be light," and I felt really uncomfortable about that because it was for this little toy, you know. But we prayed. I prayed with my mentors, including my wife Joyce, who's here tonight, and And we all felt clear, like, go ahead. By the time I arrived in Toronto to shoot it, it was out. That line was gone.
Wow.
Wow.
Another situation, I felt no peace. Though it was just to be this mad scientist guy, like in Back to the Future. Felt no peace. I was riding my bike down to the audition. I felt no peace. But I kept going. I didn't turn around, and I got there, and it was all about evolution, which I just didn't feel like I could support. I had to walk out, and I had some F-bombs dropped on me. But I followed up, wrote a very kind thank you note, apologized for taking up their time and not asking more questions ahead of time, and that casting director brought me back a number of times after that, so, and continues to.
So you guys are awesome because we're just flowing into the next question. It's like right on target. Yeah.
I just want to get, so you each gave personal anecdotes, but, this is something that every actor has dealt with, will deal with, and maybe is dealing with. Somewhere between there being a right and a wrong, which there isn't, and being it just, a very intangible, do you feel peace about it? Can you give us some sort of guidelines or advice about how us as actors, Christian actors, or just actors that want to be noble actors, with integrity, to conduct our careers with integrity, should handle those situations? Because it can run the gamut with languages, language, scripts, homosexuality, drugs, alcohol, wardrobe. How do we navigate that?
I think I'm going through that. I shared with you a little bit with my son. He was given a script. He'll be doing a reading for a movie, and it's not anything big. It's starting small, but I think, there's always that potential, you hope, right? But had I stopped reading at the first bit, I would have said, absolutely not. You are not doing this. This is not a project you will be affiliated with. However, I kept going. And life happens, man. There's ugliness all over our society, and we can't put our heads in the sand and say it doesn't happen. And this movie, in the end, turns out that there are choices in life, good, bad, whatever. And, it's what happens when you make the good, what happens when you make the bad. And we are letting him do it. Right. But had we not really digested what's going on, so I think you have to look at everything as a whole. And there are those gray areas, and I think the gray areas really just you have to be in tune with who you are in God. What Christ is working on in you. And I think, right.
And that's why I think it's important, us as talent, to have that personal mission statement and to really spend time with God and just ask Him, how can you serve? Because I think that's going to really be your compass for any decision that you make.
I would recommend you read the Bible every year. I did that when I was a kid. I did it the first 7 years of Joyce and my marriage, and somewhere after that 7th time through the Bible, I got too busy and just kind of dipped in here and there. This last year, I've read it. I'm going to finish by New Year's. I'm going to finish. And let me tell you, it is the best thing you can do for yourself in terms of giving yourself a framework to make decisions by, because it's not enough. In this society, it is not enough to go to church on Sunday and Actors Inc. on Monday night. You've got to be in the Word daily. You've got to have daily devotions, prayer. Otherwise, you're going to slip right where the society's going. And you've got to have daily connections to God and His people.
I am going to kind of piggyback off of what you said, but in the sense of a technical situation, if you are unsure, you can always send an email and ask a casting director or someone you're auditioning for more sides, or to read the entire script, because most of the time, if you're an actor, most of the time actors don't do that. You should really do that, because it does give you the opportunity to see the whole picture, to see, is your character going through a journey? Is there something that redeems he or she at the end? And you really have to just trust your gut for yourself. If you don't feel comfortable doing something because of your gut, don't do it, because it will show. And if you feel like maybe this is something that I feel, and don't pretend. Don't psych yourself out and say, oh, this character, they end up being a good person. Yes, I'm going to do it. You have to be honest with yourself, again, with where you're at,